For me, gerontology is a multidisciplinary field of study that has advanced over the past 40 years into a professional field commonly known as the field of aging.
I've been in the area of gerontology for the past 25 years, and I've seen it grow and change tremendously during this time. In my area of technology to support older adults and caregivers, I've seen the field of gerontology open itself up and become far more multidisciplinary than it ever has been.
The field of gerontology has changed enormously. When I began my career, concepts such as caregiving and even focus on Alzheimer's disease as a narrative of aging were actually unknown. Caregiving did not even appear as a concept in the 1976 version of the Handbook of Aging and the Social Sciences. Understanding of dementia and its implications really wasn't a focus for those of us trained in social gerontology. And certainly at that time, unlike today, there really wasn't a focus on interdisciplinary, transdisciplinary collaboration. And we see that so important now in how we approach questions and issues of aging. We talk about the emergence of the field of gerosciences, bringing people together across disciplines to advance knowledge and understanding.
In that time, we've seen enormous development in terms of universities in this country offering training in gerontology. And certainly the breadth of topics that we cover is much greater than in those early days, when it was basically psychology of aging, if we were lucky, maybe a biology of aging, and sociology. And since that time, we've seen new concepts, new developments. For example, the area of gerontechnology, which certainly has become much better known with the advent of the AgeWell network. And in these days in age, it's hard to be a generalist like we were in the olden days, and rather we need to have more in-depth knowledge in particular areas of specialization.
Going back to the 1960s, when I was taking my master's degree, I did my research on future time perspective among older adults. Many of my professors said to me, "What's a young thing like you interested in aging for?" And I was discouraged from doing my dissertation in the aging area. It was during the 1970s and 1980s when gerontology was being established as a multidisciplinary area of major importance in its own right, a time that has been referred to as the golden age of gerontology. There were no courses in aging, no standalone gerontology programs, no research funding targeted to aging research, no recognition of family caregivers. The aging of the baby boomers was far off. Governments took little attention to it, other than there were a few demographers and, of course, gerontologists that were bringing attention to it. More was happening in the United States and in Canada. GSA was established in 1945. CAG, the Canadian Association in Gerontology, was started in 1971. And of course, Bill Forbes was instrumental in its founding, as he was to helping to establish gerontology within Canada.
I think the study of gerontology has become far more sophisticated, thanks in part to the infusion of greater resources for research, the benefit of an increasingly wealthy society, as well as the development of new computer-based tools for design and analysis of gerontological studies, as well as far better trained cohorts of researchers to take advantage of these resources. As an example, I had no formal training in aging or gerontology when I entered the field in the late 1970s. In the early 1980s, personal computers were just becoming available for running research studies. I can remember learning to program a Commodore 64 for a study of skill-age trade-offs in bridge players. At the same time, researchers had to rely primarily on expensive mainframe computers for statistical analysis. Today, we have 1980s level supercomputers in our smartphones and access to freeware tools such as the language R for analyzing and modeling our data. The result is far more reliable and hopefully replicable findings on which to base public policy.
I see the movement toward nothing about us without us as an important advancement in the field. Including older adults as advisors in research or program and service development is a natural progression. Learning from the lived experience can only enhance the experience and improve the product for the end user.
The recognition that the various tools we use to care for older adults can include things like technology, robotics, artificial intelligence, and smart homes as just one piece of the puzzle has been really, really important in the way that we move forward. I can see this continuing in the area of gerontology. We're going to continue to become more multidisciplinary. We're going to see other tools and techniques that we can use in our research. And gerontology is going to become more important than ever.
In terms of where the field of aging might be headed or how it will evolve in the next while, a number of factors I think are important. First of all, we continue to homogenize the population over the age of 65. There's a recognition, of course, that many people, and increasing numbers of people, live to age 65, and not sufficient emphasis on the fact of how many of us will spend a large part of our lives in later life. So that recognition of process change, of the differences between different generations, multiple generations, all over the age of 65, will, I feel, come to dominate the field as we move forward. Again, the role of longitudinal research in that enterprise is important, as well as engaging with older people themselves in the research enterprise. That's something that's happened in recent years and will certainly continue.
All this to say, there is continuing need for more research, more partnerships with communities and with governments, more education, more advocacy. We need researchers, governments, and communities working together.
I can see glimmers of hope with private investment by billionaires into, for instance, anti-aging research. But perhaps at some point in the future, maybe they'll start a new Nobel Prize equivalent for aging science that will help accelerate the influx of researchers needed to contribute at the highest level to our field.
This multidisciplinary approach and the recognition for the need of different tools and approaches in the work that we do was only made possible by the visionary work of Professor Forbes and how he contributed to the area of gerontology across Canada and around the world. Thank you to all of you, to my colleagues and to my friends. I'm part of this, and thank you very much to Professor Forbes.
When I gave the inaugural Bill Forbes lecture at the University of Waterloo in 2018, I talked about Bill's commitment to nurturing professional development and identities through his founding role as president of both the Canadian Association on Gerontology and the Ontario Gerontology Association, and his role as well, quite active, in the Ontario Longitudinal Study of Aging, which was a landmark enterprise at the time, and really spoke to his recognition of the need for that kind of data collection. If we are going to describe and attempt to understand processes of aging over the life course, we need that kind of data. Thank you, Bill.
Although it takes a village to raise a gerontologist, you need visionary leaders to start the gerontology societies with the necessary resources to do that training. Bill was one such leader who played a central role in Canada and in my personal development in the field of gerontology, and who stimulated my interest in leadership positions, first in University of Waterloo's gerontology programs and in the Canadian Association on Gerontology, not to mention later leadership roles I assumed in the United States. The field owes a debt of gratitude to Bill Forbes.